In this way, there is no political interference in who is aided. And we have no control over who is given assistance. In that way, someone...
Leading us off today will be the Minister of Equity, Honorable Joachim Henry. He will provide you with updates concerning the World Food Program, a groundbreaking initiative that will, of course, increase access to critical services so that the most vulnerable are not left behind. And, of course, this administration advances the whole putting people first agenda. So, Mr. Henry.
Thank you very much. Good morning. The government of St. Lucia and the United Nations World Food Program have signed 2 landmark cooperation agreements aimed at enhancing the country's disaster response capacity. These agreements will provide tailored support to the people at the highest risk during and after crisis. This is particularly important to me as parliamentary representative for Castries Southeast, where many of my constituents are on the front line of natural disasters on a yearly basis. The anticipatory action agreements establishes a system to deliver targeted cash-based assistance to vulnerable households up to 72 hours before an expected crisis or hurricane. And I think this, to set it in context, we have approximately 3,500 persons on public assistance, 1,500 on the waiting list, over 400 persons receiving the disability grant. What it means, and of course over 100 persons living with HIV, all of these persons, in the event that a hurricane is approaching, we would be the first in the Caribbean to pilot an anticipatory action, vulnerability risk reduction, where funds are transferred to these individuals before, 72 hours before a crisis or hurricane hits, so that they can prepare and reduce their vulnerability. So you're getting money before the hurricane strikes. So approximately over 3,500 persons will be receiving cash this year. And this is supported by the World Food Program, the United Nations World Food Program, and they are supporting St. Lucia in implementing this anticipatory action. We are the first island in the Caribbean, and we are being studied to see exactly how it works. We had a pilot last week where we randomly selected 500 persons, and they received cash. We set up the system in place, they receive vouchers and what have you, and we are about, sometime this year, if a storm is approaching, 72 hours before it hits, that these individuals will be receiving cash transfers. Also, I'd like to speak to or share with you that community assistance to 3 churches in Castries Southeast over the weekend. I provided cash donation of $10,000 to 3 churches in the constituency, namely Bexar Roman Catholic Church, the Labi SD, and the Sarat SDA Church. Again, consistent with reducing vulnerability, these churches will have the capacity to respond in the event there's a disaster, able to provide food to needy persons in the constituency, and of course, to reduce on the incidence of vagrancy in the city. Because if persons can receive food support in their locality, it would reduce the incidence of coming down to the city of Castries, because that's the only place where they're being fed. Studies have shown that churches are an important part of social cohesion in any society, and in Castries Southeast, we have as many as 23 churches. It is my goal to empower people, organizations, and groups, and what better way than to assist the churches in their community service programs. In this way, there is no political interference in who is aided. I, Joachim Henry, have no control over who is given assistance. In that way, someone who needs help will not feel anxious about coming to me personally, but can pursue the avenues already available at these churches. I have only strengthened the church's capacity to assist the communities. I just need to update you on just one other very important initiative, that is the Cul-de-sac Farmers Market. Very soon this week, you will see a very large billboard somewhere in Cul-de-sac saying that the Castries Southeast Farmers Market is coming soon. And of course, the location is where, below the new bridge, where you have this vast space of land that was acquired by the government of St. Lucia. I think there was a place where they were selling parts before. So the entire place there, the entire place has been approved by the Cabinet of Ministers for Castries Southeast Market. Cabinet approved it. And very soon, you will be seeing the operations of a market. I need to share with you that the market is not just a place with infrastructure. It's a place where people come and buy and sell. What we'll be doing is to cause there to be a market, to facilitate. Thereafter, you will see the investment in heavy infrastructure. So there will be light infrastructure, tents, hot water, the basic services that is needed, lighting and water view for there to be a market. The butchers will be receiving aluminum best facilities for selling the meats. And of course, there would be many tents for persons willing to vend. And of course, it will be part of a farmers' cooperative in Castries Southeast. I need to continue to inform you that infrastructure and drainage continue to happen in Castries Southeast because of the issue of landslides. To avoid landslides, of course, we have the hurricane season is upon us. The aim is to reestablish drainage patterns without disturbing settlement and housing. We will empower residents with the resources and means to undertake minor drainage projects around their home. Also, very importantly, the Bel Childhood Development Center. I am extremely pleased to speak to this one. So there will be a new childhood center in Bel. It will be opening for September. It will be under the control of the Ministry of Education. There will be staff employed. And this one, I'm so happy to say that Bel will have an early childhood center to serve Bel, Sarot, and the environs. And the Bel housing scheme and Crown lands, as it relates to Crown lands, that is happening very quickly. Almost, we have mutated almost 200 lots, and persons in Odson, Bel will receive lots consistent with the policy of government. Where persons are 40 years on those lots, they will get it for free, and persons who have to purchase will be purchased. So these are some of the ongoing activities within the ministry and within the Castries Southeast constituency. Questions?
Yes. Yes.
Before we start the question,
Yes, sir. Yeah, good day. Yes, sir. When you speak of vulnerable persons, one thing that comes to mind is homeless shelters. I know we have one in Castries Central, but when you think of the northern region or even the southern region, well, I could say for the northern region, I live in the northern region, and we have a lot of this. You see them walking up the highways. We have them in the grocery town. What is the status in terms of homeless shelters? Is there a need for more of it, or is there a need to update it, upgrade it? What would you say about this?
And a number of churches, schools, and these are the responsibility on the NEMO. They identify those shelters in the event and ensure that they're up to date. So we work with NEMO where that is concerned. I am not aware of a situation where we have inadequate shelters. So when a disaster is approaching, NEMO and its allied agencies and community-based organizations, the community-based NEMO groups, all of them activate the processes and the procedures to ensure that persons who may be without a home find themselves in a shelter for protection. What we as a ministry is responsible for is persons who are already deemed vulnerable, who are receiving public assistance, who are disabled on our list. What we're doing is to reduce their vulnerability by providing them with cash transfers before a hurricane hits, and of course that anticipatory action, which is supported by the World Food Program, they are providing the resources for us to do so in St. Lucia.
But what I was speaking of is we have the, how we call it, at VG, the cornerstone. Yeah. But Grosile has a large community. You know, I mean, you see these people up and down the streets, up and down the highway. Some of them have got knocked down by vehicles. Some of them have. What would it be feasible to have such a complex somewhere in the northern area to take care of some of these?
I am not absolutely sure because the studies has been made that a lot of persons who are on the streets is not that they are without a house. The nature of the situation have them on the streets, but they do have family members and they have homes to go to. So when a disaster is approaching, it activates the wider community and family members to pursue and get their loved ones, their family members. I'm almost certain that almost everyone most persons who are on the street there's a family member or some persons that they can relate to. The Cornerstone was set up as a charitable organization to bring relief to some individuals, but they do not sleep at the shelter even if there are beds. They return and have a hard sleep because of the nature of the illness. You know, we have done studies on that. We have done recordings of them. The beds remain empty at Cornerstone and they return. So similar to they being at home. My dad used to be on the street, yet he had his house in Black Malay. But when I see him on the street, I say, hey, Daddy, what's up and what have you? You would believe that he's homeless. He had tenants, yet he was on the street because of his illness. So I'm saying that not everybody who is on the street that appear to be living a vagrant life means that they do not have means. It's the family members that needs to, when a disaster is approaching, to activate their responsibility to their loved ones in addition to what government is doing.
Okay, just finally, so when you're going to provide this 72 hours, you know, monetary assistance to these persons, would you giving it to them directly or to a family member, to someone responsible for them?
So, and this is what we have put in place. Where there is a need to give it to a farm, that's already is in place. To persons who are receiving public assistance, the mechanism for receiving the money is already in place. So they have their bank accounts, monies go directly to bank accounts, and where we have new persons without bank accounts where we need to bring in food vouchers to facilitate that, we do that within 72 hours before that happens.
Okay. Good afternoon. Your opponent in Castries Southeast had a public meeting last night, and he made mention of a contention between the two of you over a playing court at Tiroche, and it was painted a certain color. It was painted yellow, and he spoke to a contention between you and himself. Could you provide more context, please?
Yeah, I never had a contention with my opponent. I didn't see him. I heard that they were painting the court yellow, so I went to the community of Tiroche. I saw them. I said to them that what they were doing was not right. I said there's a government in power, and I do not think it's correct that anyone should just go into a public facility and paint it to to any color. But in that case, it was a political color. I had never seen the former parliamentary representative. He was not on the scene at all. And the persons who someone said I cursed, I didn't. I spoke to them in the way that I was, happy about what I saw happening, and I responded accordingly, and I drove away. I didn't stay more than about maybe 2 minutes for the most in just expressing my disgust, and I moved out because the place had almost finished. They had finished painting the place already when I saw it, so it's not something that I could have stopped, but express what I thought should not have happened.
On that same note, Mr. MP, Mr. Minister, is there, part of the complaints from some of the Tiroche residents was that facility was not built using, or the construction was not done using government or state resources, state monies. They raised it on their own. So my question to you is that facility, as far as you're aware, on state land or privately owned land? And considering that it's a facility for public use, is there still some sort of procedure when it comes to modifying or altering these facilities?
All community assets, community centers, even in the days when mothers and fathers mobilized funds and built community centers, they did it with government. And government provided land for the purpose of that reason. In the case of the Tiroche community, the multipurpose court in Tiroche, it is a public asset. There's two, as a land surveyor, I'm saying that. On the land register, there's two ways of classifying property, private or crown. There's no other way. So if it's not private, it's crown. And in under the law of land, anything that's not movable on land belongs to the land. So everything on the land that is immovable, including the concrete structure, is the crown and is subject to be regulated by the crown. It's a public asset. As a matter of fact, the sitting accommodation was built. I facilitated that under this administration through the National Lottery Authority. And the property has been maintained over the years by an intervention of government. There was an active development committee, and like all other development committees, they work with government through the Ministry of Youth and Sports and what have you to maintain and to have the upkeep. So there are many projects in St. Lucia. I know the Dakite-Strozel Community Center was built by the community with aid from the St. Lucia Poverty Reduction Fund at the time, but they provided quite a bit. It is a public asset, So many, the Entrepot RDC, through the mothers and fathers from Bacatel, provided quite a bit of funds, and I recall they may have provided pretty close to maybe 100,000, and the government put in another 400,000 when it was first built. It is a public facility. So anybody who suggests because 2 persons or 3 persons or a group of individuals go and build on government property, that it doesn't belong to the government, I do not know how to explain it, but of course, it shows that there's a lack of understanding or persons deliberately choose not to understand certain things. I do not believe that's a case of misunderstanding. I think this is persons caught doing something that is wrong, and I think this should stop. Currently, we are repainting the facility, and before that, before that happened, I think it was in Badi-Chaussee, there was a court painted yellow. During the Easter holidays, we mobilized the young men, and I repainted it gray, not red. Right? Gray. So if you go to the Badi-Chaussee court, which was once a yellow facility, is now a gray facility. Currently, the Tiroche court that was painted yellow yesterday is currently painted gray. And I've used the opportunity, there's a yellow one in Sarat, is going down as well as gray. I personally do not believe that public assets should be painted in party colors, red or yellow. It's very divisive, and it does not bring ownership to communities. The community are made up of both parties, and therefore I believe a color of a public asset that serves the community should be of a color that everybody else can embrace. My constituency office, for the purpose of that, is white on the inside, that when persons come to see me, they do not see a color. They see the parliamentary representative. The former parrep had his painted yellow. So, consistent with my philosophy and what I believe, I act accordingly. I do not subscribe to certain things. It doesn't matter who else is doing it. And for the purpose of Castries Southeast, I am mobilizing the community to do better under the auspices that we all have some goodness to pursue, whether you're UWP or SLP. And there are many UWPs who called me and said they were unhappy about what transpired yesterday. They would not say it in the open, but I know that what is good is still relevant, and character is still relevant today. Irrespective of how vile we think our communities are and the trouble that we're encountering, and some of the things that I've heard, it's unfortunate that at the current time, 2025, when we're supposed to, step up in our rhetoric for governance, that the nature of the conversation that I heard in that meeting was what it was, and I certainly will not participate in that type of rhetoric. I didn't curse anybody. I expressed my disgust as to what was happening. I tried to reach the Commissioner of Police because this is a violation and which should not be encouraged. No young person should be encouraged to just take up a spray paint and spray up a school or a public facility, and if a young person cannot do it, then why then somebody aspiring to become a parliamentary representative without being in government, without having the power, without seeking approval, should just go ahead and paint a public facility. This morning I was told that they want to go and paint the school. And I embark on a land survey to ensure that, one, we actually get block and parcel numbers and a land register for each parcel of land. The survey was completed and the mutation was done at the land registry. We now have land registers. I think I've received 60 for the Bele constituent, for the Bele community, and I think the land registry said that they have 180 land registers, each one with a block and parcel number. Only now you can rationalize and say, if you are on this parcel, so we now have an exercise to go underground to see who is on the parcel or if it's vacant. When he did it, he ascribed names to it, and to be honest, I would uphold the names that are there. They are fair to receive it. But would I'm struggling in my mind. Should I give Ross Clark, for example, whose name is there for a parcel of land in Bel Air at $2 a square foot? Should I do this? Because that's one of the names he submitted before his cabinet, and it's approved in their cabinet that Ross Clark, who is now a candidate in the election, is down to receive a parcel of land. There are some names who are there where there are almost 6 or 8 families in the same household, each getting a lot. Is this administering a housing program, or is this lot for votes? And at the time at which it was done, it was near election. So in as much as I respect, and there are many persons who are on the list submitted who will receive, but I need to ensure that those persons who will receive are not disadvantaging persons who are already on the land or in the immediate area. So I am not applying any political screening to it, because some of the persons that he assigned lots to have come to me, and I said, yes, I will honor this. I'll not call out their names. But I would like to do it giving the benefit to persons who are in the area, or in the environment. So, for example, I saw persons all the way from Forestier down to receive a lot in Bel Air. I'm saying if that is needed, if there's a spare lot for this to happen, I would do so. But if there are persons living in Bel Air who are asking for a house lot, why should I deny them and then take somebody who is not so much in need all the way from Forestier and give them a lot in Bel Air? How would that look like? So the issue, yes, he has started it. It will continue, and during in the next few weeks, we will be assigning lots to persons, and it will be one that is transparent. I've had a meeting public meeting in both Bel Air and in Odsa to tell them what the process is and how it is going on. So there's nothing fishy about the land project. It's just that having somebody to prepare a subdivision plan or taking 2 acres of land and cutting it up in pieces and drawing roads and then say I can get 200 and then receive 200 names and send it to cabinet does not amount to a housing development program in its sense. No, it's not. As a surveyor, I would tell you, you need to get your subdivision approved, and then you need to embark on survey, then you need to rationalize it, then you need to still get back after you've surveyed to go and correct it, because there are some persons, septic tank, who is on that lot and whatever, you need to cure all of these things because the land is already encumbered. There are people living there.
Any other questions?
I have one. Can I? Just one quick question on rehabilitation. So I know that there's plans to move the Boys Training Center, Uptown Girls, into a facility. There have been some concerns raised as to the thought process behind bringing the 2 genders together. Can you just provide some clarity on that and perspective?
The 2 genders? Yeah, well, okay, thank you very much. I think that's a very important question. A juvenile center as I observe in Grenada, the Bacalet Juvenile Center, they're both males, boys and girls. We currently have the transit home with a manager and assistant manager, and sometimes we have just about 12 girls with a large staff, and the staff complement exceeds the number of residents. The Uptown Girls, sometimes they have 10. There's a manager, assistant manager with a staff complement, sometimes exceeds the number of persons we have there. Likewise, we have the Boys Training Center. Manager, assistant manager, and really large, staff complement that caters for sometimes 13 wards, 13 boys. We need to rationalize this because in other jurisdictions, you're able to have the necessary staff to really effectively administer care and protection and rehabilitation of persons without having 6 managers. So we are bringing it together, following best standard. CDB was with us last week doing a review of it. We are now going to embark on an environmental social assessment of the project, seeing that we have moved ahead and we have some solutions. We also have a situation where those who are in conflict with the law will be part of it, and the design need to respond accordingly. Not that it's a prison. At the same time, we want to ensure that it is safe. We want to see how the rest of the community surrounding George Charles will respond, and all of the other concerns. That's where we are, but we're moving ahead with having, I think, the best juvenile center according to the feedback I'm getting from the CDB officials in the region. George Charles will become, I think, the model of a juvenile center in the Caribbean. That's what we're approaching. I think both both sexes, both genders will be pleased. We want to have the best game room ever. You could consider for our children a panyard and music studio. We want to create a juvenile center that anybody who is not there will feel excited about the fact that we are providing the best for our children when they are in conflict with the law or when they are not being served by their family or when they fall through the cracks, as often happens with our people and their families. Yeah? Have I answered all questions? Thank you.
So when you say full finance, we have a couple of conclusions. So there's certain basic things that we need to stick to. And we do the wrong one.
Because everybody else is believing one thing and then they do their own thing. So when you talk, it's inaccurate.
Yes, I have to know how to do.
So maybe not list.
Yeah, I'll list it. So I just know what I have to say. Good morning, everybody.
I think King coming down.
Okay, good morning, Honorable Emma is ready.
How is everybody this morning? Okay. So I need to talk to you on one of the... No, I'm not speaking about truckers. I'm not speaking
Yesterday,
about
a budget
truckers.
promise was fulfilled and Honorable Emma is here to speak on that.
Yes. One of the promises that was made by the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister for Finance, during the last budget debate was the removal of the 6% service charge on price control. And that had to come into effect on the 1st of June. So I'm just telling you that we have a statutory instrument, and this is issued by the Ministry of Finance, but we have a statutory instrument now to inform you that this is a promise that was made and that promise is now kept. So we have a listing of price control items. Included in these price control items, you might have a few items that are of a larger size than the price control. For example, if we have oil, for example, of 750 mil, you might also see on the list oil with a larger size. But all the price control items, we've removed the service charge on them. 6% cheaper, supposed to be. Yeah.
6.5 or 6.5?
Questions, anyone?
Well, I'll.
Jerry?
As is expected, from the opposition side, They believe that the suspension of the price control and the suspension of the VAT on some of the products is a piecemeal. It's not going to satisfactorily address the cost of living crisis. What's your response to the opposition's criticism?
Well, the opposition can have their own views on a lot of things. It is the consumer, as a government, our responsibility is to ensure that we protect our consumers as much as is possible. And as a government, we cannot control the price of goods as it lands at the port. But what we can do is to look at the VAT, the service charge, the areas where government has control over, and that is what we're addressing. The opposition can scream and shout. The people in the supermarket, our consumers, when they go into the supermarket, our responsibility is to give them a reprieve, and this is what this SI is doing. I also want to tell you that another promise that was made by the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister for Finance is that we are also going to remove, I want to report to you that staff at my ministry, we've worked with the business community, Chamber of Commerce in particular, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Commerce. We have prepared a list. It is now with the Ministry of Finance for final vetting so that we can have this effective 1st of July. So again, it's our government working on behalf of consumers and the people of St. Lucia.
Okay. Good afternoon.
Is
Two
it
questions.
afternoon?
Yeah. Two
Oh,
questions.
yeah. Yes.
Could you give us a rundown of some of the items that the service charge would be removed from?
Some of the items: milk and powder, cheddar cheese, potatoes, onions, garlic, split peas, black-eyed peas, that's beans, rice of all sorts with flour, soybean oils and other oils, margarine, canned corned beef, sardines, mackerel, tuna, brown sugar, salted biscuits, baby foods. So it's just telling you some of the basic things that all of us must have in our shopping basket. Not the luxurious items, the basic foods that all of us would have in our shopping baskets.
Okay, so but there are some fears that even despite the removal of the service charge, retailers may still continue to price gouge. In the case which happened with sanitary napkins last year, I believe. So what avenues are available to consumers in the event that happens?
This is price control items. Remember that? Price control items, after it is landed, the retailer, the importer needs to do the basic calculation, and it is presented at the Ministry of Commerce for confirmation of the selling prices. After we have done this, it goes on the shelves, and within the Ministry of Commerce, we have our inspectors who go out to verify. So these price control items, I think some time ago we spoke to you about the way we monitor. We have the National Consumers Association as well on the ground to check. And I also must tell you that based on the conversations that we're having with the business community, they are also seized with the times that we are in terms of understanding their role in ensuring that this economy grows. Their role as a government, we have assisted because we know the challenges faced by the business community as well. Within the budget debate, Prime Minister made significant concession to the business community. And it was done specifically so that they can work with the government to protect the consumer. So I am expecting them, as the minister, to work with us. They've given us a commitment that they're going to work with us as much as possible, and that is what I expect. So I do not want to go the other side at all. So there's a level of trust and understanding as to what is happening internationally and what we have to do to protect the consumers in our country. That's where we are at the moment.
Yes, Madam Minister, just to take it a little further in terms of commodities, what would be the status with our poultry? We know there was a certain procedure where a quota of local poultry to exported or imported poultry. Eggs, what is the conditions that's available right now?
The conditions have not changed. We are also working with our poultry producers. We also, as a government, sourced alternative markets to source our poultry from. And I know that the Ministry of Agriculture worked for about a year to get poultry out of Brazil. And a few months ago, I know the minister reported that we had finally made a breakthrough in that area. And with that breakthrough, we should have a reduction in the cost of poultry coming into the country.
But in terms of just
we are seeing a high cost of eggs. What can you say to this and what can you?
Well, I do not know what the selling price is, but when you compare a dozen of eggs, maybe to me it was about $14, might be in that region, EC for a dozen. I want you to compare that with the US, where it is $15 US. Just do the comparison. In St. Lucia, it is in the region of about 14 EC dollars per dozen. In the US, it's 15 US dollars. So, you understand that, Jerry? You answer. I have answered you?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
the local poultry there's a price difference between the local poultry products and the foreign. How is that are we able to negotiate the?
Well, it's not a matter of negotiation. When you are comparing, I would like to say you are not comparing apples and apples, although you think you're comparing apples and apples. If you look at a chicken from St. Lucia, we are comparing a chicken from St. Lucia that we have here, a broiler here, and chicken imported. The main difference between the two is the freshness of the product and the quality of the product. That's the main. I'm not going to say the age, but you have a chicken, when a local chicken, you have it immediately on the shelf, maybe a week after processing. You have it on your shelf, fresh. Any market, your fresh meat is a lot more expensive than frozen. Any market. You have as well the whole issue of production, mass production. For us, our production is a lot smaller, and you will always get a higher price when you have a smaller quantity in terms of your production. I must tell you that as a ministry, we are also working with the manufacturers of chicken feed, our local manufacturers, as well as our regional manufacturers of chicken feed. As well, we're working as well with the Ministry of Agriculture to ensure that as much as possible we have the best quality for the chicken feed, and that the quality of the feed that our producers get here is contributing to a chicken that has the right weight, so that they too can maximize the returns as well. So we are working at different fronts. On different fronts, sorry. Yes?
Hi, morning.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Just a quick question. Since there's a lot of discussion about the ports right now and congestion.
About the ports?
Yeah, and congestion. I wanted to just find out the ministry's thoughts on what's happening. I know that there was a conclusion reached with the truckers, but there have been complaints over the months in terms of people's barrels and stuff getting stuck, not being released. And I know we're a few months away from Christmas, but it is coming. So what is the ministry's stance and what's being?
Well, the ministry, as you know, we represent the business community as well as the consumers. We have been having conversation with the chamber. The chamber has expressed concerns to us. And I know in my hands today is a note because the chamber has asked for a meeting for the intervention of the minister responsible for the ports, that is the Minister for Infrastructure. The long and short of it is we are going to sit. The minister responsible for infrastructure, the minister responsible for finance, because the port has two ministers. The port is quite unique. It has two ministers, Minister for Finance and Minister for Infrastructure. I will sit as a Minister for Commerce and see what are the operational issues that we have to address. I know from previous discussion that the minister has made certain recommendations to see how certain items can be sent down to Port View Fort. So I need to tell you that we are conscious of what is happening out there, and as a government we are going to sit to ensure that we have smooth sailing. We know the truckers are a challenge, but we are going to sit and provide some guidance to the Port Authority and to the traffic police so that we have better coordination. Yes? You all didn't ask anything about the boat in the Soufriere harbor. How come? Press. Yeah? As you all are here, there is a boat that was submerging, the yacht that was submerging the Soufriere harbor. From yesterday, we've been trying to deal with the matter, and right now they should be there trying to lift it, raise it from the water and so on. And it's a yacht. It's a yacht. It sort of maybe hit something and run into difficulty. So yesterday morning, Sunday morning, so all of Sunday we've been on the Soufriere jetty trying to deal with the matter. And as I'm speaking now, they're on the wharf, they're trying to deal with that matter.
Is it causing some issues with public safety?
Well, we are thankful up to now that we actually, this morning they were trying to take the fuel and everything out of the boat before they move it out. But it is a concern to us, our ecosystem in Soufriere. So we have challenges, but we're trying to deal with them.
And will be paying the cost for this?
Well, the yacht would have an insurance somewhere. Let's be insured. Okay.
Yes.
Have a blessed day. All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, I notice we've got a full house today. Some familiar faces, some not so familiar. Okay, so let me again take this opportunity to extend warm greetings to all of you and to probably just touch on a few subject areas. First and foremost, I'm pleased to announce that as of yesterday, the promise made by the Prime Minister in the 2025-26 budget took effect, and it's to do with the airport service charge amendment regulations, which reduces travel tax for St. Lucians traveling out of St. Lucia and regional travelers traveling to St. Lucia. So that is just a 6-month initiative to help particularly during the period of the summer moving forward, to allow regional travelers and St. Lucians to be able to travel with a 50% reduction in the airport service charge. We are hoping that will have some impact on the economy to see in terms of regional travelers maybe opting to travel to St. Lucia as a priority, as a destination of choice. So 6 months, and then it goes back in January to the original. The other matter which probably I'll mention is the matter pertaining to the situation at SLASPA last week. That situation arose out of the what I call the busy port operations in the last 2 or 3 years. What we have seen are a number of significant statistics. We have seen the increase in the arrival of cargo, containerized cargo, but yet still the carriers or the shipping lines, have failed to remove the empty containers. And if you have a look at Port Castries, you'll see the number of containers that have been stacked, 4 and probably 5 container heights. That's one. The other one is the number of motor vehicles that are landing in St. Lucia. And in February, there was an instance when the importers were unable to receive their orders for February, January, February, and that more or less accumulated to the most recent orders. And last week we had 400 plus motor vehicles which came in. That included new vehicles, used vehicles, and other vehicles. Because of the congestion on the port had to take some decisions in terms of managing the logistics to accommodate the vehicles coming in and to facilitate those persons who had ordered the vehicles to be able to receive it on time, considering the fact that the previous shipment was delayed and they were not able to benefit from the vehicle which they ordered. So we made the necessary arrangements and we were able to accommodate the carrier. And this time it was a much bigger carrier because of the numbers and because of not just in St. Lucia, but in some of the other islands, we saw the numbers increasing. And so we were able to accommodate the 400 plus vehicles as of Friday into Saturday. And on Saturday, we were able to allow the new car dealers to receive all of their vehicles. The used car dealers, they were a little tardy and delayed because most of them do not have a bond. So we were forced to allow the vehicles to stay on port, and that in itself interfered with the movement of truckers who normally ply the docks in terms of removal of containers, particularly, to their final destination. So that interfered, and therefore SLASPA had to put in place mechanisms to be able to slow down the entry into the port so as to avoid further congestion. That caused another problem. And the problem it caused was that the fact that the truckers were being ticketed outside of the port once they were alongside the road, which is a piece of legislation that governs parking on the shoulders of roads. So that created some problem. But the problems seem to have been, developing over a period of time with SLASPA. And they're merely operational problems, not policy, operation problems. And so the truckers took some action. SLASPA, from my last report, has been able to meet with the truckers. We have been able to make some adjustments in terms of facilitating the truckers. So one of them being our ability to remove cars into VFR. For those persons who have not collected the vehicles, to move it out of the port into VFR, and to allow what we call a trucking lay-by, to allow the trucks to be able to enter the port and to have a facility where the truckers can line up and await their call to pick up the cargo that they come in and pick up. So that has been put in place as of Saturday and should be operational. In fact, today, if not all, but most of the truckers returned to their operations. To another issue, and the issue it speaks to is the need for a new port here in this country. We are operating on a 10-acre lot of land in terms of the operations of SLASPA, 10 acres. But over the time, we have seen that being diminished by the multiple use of port castries. And the delays, as I said earlier on, the tardiness in the shippers to pull out the empty containers off the docks on time and to allow the rollover of cargo and empty containers in a timely manner. So what we have been working on for the last few years is to find an alternative port. Under the last administration, there was a look at cul-de-sac to establish, well, if I should say a dock. And the cost of just that dock, which would have accommodated one ship at a time, was not at all economical. This government has gone further, and we are now concluding an exercise, a consultancy, sponsored and financed by the Caribbean Development Bank, to look at cul-de-sac, to develop cul-de-sac as a full-fledged port. A full-fledged port that will complement and, of course, offset port castries so as to provide the kind of accommodation necessary for a full operational, commercial, and possibly transshipment port in cul-de-sac. So that study will look at whether it is possible. One, whether the harbor, in terms of the draft of the bay, can accommodate the vessels. Two, if they cannot, whether there can be the level of dredging to facilitate, and we speak mostly on the northern side of cul-de-sac, because Hess is on the southern side, and they did some serious dredging when they started the fuel farm down at cul-de-sac at Hess, which is operated now by Buckeye. So they've got to look at all of this in terms of docking facilities, the number of docks which the port can possibly accommodate when it is operational, if it is advised, and then to have adequate, what I call dock space for containers. So for me, looking down the road, 2030 thereabout, what we're looking for is a facility that can probably be in an acreage of about 40 acres. 4 times the size of the current port castries, 40 acres to be able to accommodate containers, whether full or empty. But then I would imagine one of the other aspects we would need to do is to look at an off-port or off-dock facility. So if you cannot keep your containers, but to get another bonded facility away from the dock, which can provide that kind of service, full-fledged service, to allow for easy operations between the port and other users of the port. So that is the current situation. I don't envisage any unnecessary, whether strike or industrial actions or whatever the case may be. I must admit that the truckers have not reached out to me. I've been in touch with SLASPA, the Chamber of Commerce, the car dealers. In fact, at the time of my engagement with everybody else, it wasn't even envisaged that the truckers would have gone on strike or taken industrial action. It was really a preemptive move when I was informed that we would have some congestion on the port, and a decision was asked as to whether we can afford to allow the ship carrier to bypass St. Lucia. So that is the current situation as we speak. Now, I do know some of you will again ask, what about the roads? What about Millennium Highway? What about West Coast Road? What is happening? Because everybody seems to feel that, and there are some who believe that roads for them is a low-hanging fruit, because it gives them, they hope it would give them undeserving credits in their aspiration to find themselves in prominent places, not by car or boat, but to find themselves in prominent places. The situation is, last week, the Caribbean Development Bank did a mission to St. Lucia to assess where we are in terms of Millennium Highway and West Coast Road, and I believe it was a successful mission. From all indications, the Millennium Highway seemed to be slowly getting to the finish line. We all are getting frustrated. The whole nation seemed to be frustrated. But one of the things which came out of that meeting is my appeal to the CDB to use our experience with the Millennium Highway West Coast Road to try and make a determination in as far as the modality and the architecture of such a modality in the future. And what I mean by that is that the Millennium West Coast Highway came out of a grant by the British government. It was a grant given to the Caribbean as far as I believe it was Prime Minister, was it Blair, one of them, as far back as 2015 thereabout, when he gave the Caribbean islands an opportunity to improve their infrastructure to enhance their social and economic development. And St. Lucia took the decision that what we should do is to enhance the Millennium Highway, more or less the West Coast corridor, all the way to Soufriere for a number of reasons. One, Soufriere being a touristic destination, cul-de-sac, a promising commercial belt, and of course to enhance those areas, and the Japanese came in afterwards and assisted us with the bridge because of the need to offset the deficit we've got in the valley, consequential on flooding, particularly in a 1 in 50 hurricane event. So that has been finished, etc., and we're hoping that we'll be able to complete the road in time and to have it ready for sometime in September, when we're hoping to have a big national event to at least recognize one of our St. Lucian heroes with the naming of the highway and the declaration of the Millennium Highway, declaration of a new name, and of course the official opening of the Japanese-funded bridge. The West Coast Road, which and the Canaries Bridge, the two are part of the project. That is ongoing. Again, expressions of concern, expressions on the methodology that is being used, the approach that is being used by the contractor or contractors, and the need to find ways and means to move forward. So in other words, for us, it is about one, for the bank to consider, one, that it was a grant to the government of St. Lucia, channeled through the Caribbean Development Bank, with all the enabling architecture, meaning a project management team, an independent consulting engineer, and other officials who on a daily basis manage the project moving forward, from design to implementation, hopefully for completion. So we've asked them, I have asked them to look into this, because it must be the development of a new rule book, so that in future, when grants are given, gifts are given, that while we understand the need to underpin such intentions, we want to ensure that it doesn't interfere with the efficiency and the implementation of the project during construction time. So these are some of the things. West Coast, there are a number of issues we need to deal with. Of course, the contractors seem now settling down in terms of their relationship with the workforce. They seem to have had some issues. That seemed to be settling down. The issues we raised about certain aspects of the project which we have recognized. There's one other issue that is coming up in terms of a new water line between Columbet and the other community in Soufriere. But I'll come back to it. But that section there, we need to look at it, the section between Columbet and Bouton. So that is being handled, and we're hoping that with the mission and probably some tweaking of the arrangement, we'll see an improvement in the speed at which the project is being implemented. As far as the other programs of the government is concerned, we are continuing towards at least completing the negotiations with the Kuwaiti government and the CDB in as far as the Julian R. Hunt Highway is concerned, from the Shock Bridge to the Grosley Junction, and to look at the other roads, which I call the relief roads, for example, Norbert, Vieux-Sequi, Corinth, and a connection to Asu Canal. That we're hoping that we can commence work very soon. We're now looking at the acquisition of lands. We have done all of the surveys necessary, and we will have a memo to Cabinet next Monday to get Cabinet to agree on the acquisitions that we should make for the Vieux-Sequi, Norbert, Corinth Road. That means what will happen in time for commencement of work on the Julian R. Hunt Highway, we will commence work on that bypass road to be able to widen where possible, enhance, make it safer, etc., so more people can use it as a relief road, which will help in the congestion on the Castries Gosley or the Julian R. Hunt Highway. There are a number of other roads that we have down on our program to commence this month. Roads in the city, particularly Jeremy Street and the Brazil Street. We have the continuation of Chaussee Road into Calvary onto the VG roundabout and Lance Road. We've got a number of other roads. We've just completed waterworks into Chaussee. We have others in some of the other constituencies that we're looking at in Castries Southeast. We're looking at Lacroix to Odsa. That's a major one which we have to look at, and there's some other secondary roads. And throughout the island, we have identified a number of roads, and I will, once we have the final approval, I will certainly be able, maybe, to come here with you and to make a formal announcement of the roads and the time frame for commencement of the works. So basically, this forms part of my introduction, and if there are any questions, I'm here to answer your questions.
As you mentioned, roads, Chaussee Road, something last week was brought to our attention at the Voice that some person had taken it upon themselves to draw across the road a pedestrian crossing or some kind of signage that was not government approved. Would the ministry know of this issue or something?
Well, it wasn't a serious person. Obviously, he seemed to have been responding to his own mind and to respond to what he thought was necessary at the time. But, you know, once a road is constructed, there's a defects liability period and a snag period. The snag period is to allow the contractor to go onto the road and to deal with whatever shortcomings in the construction of the road. Once you have completed the snag period, then you do the necessary furniture, whether it's some delineators on the road, street marking, pedestrian crossing, speed bumps, you put that. So the gentleman thought he was helping, and he went in and marked his own pedestrian crossing, and you recognize there was no professionalism in it. But the contractor has started doing the marking on the road. I think they started late last week or thereabout in terms of marking the roads. But yes, I'm aware of it, but I thought I should. So
is there a time frame for the completion of the Chaussee Road?
The road is completed. There are a few manholes because it just says how long it takes. In fact, the project got delayed by probably 6 months, awaiting the WASCO to get the pipes in there. But it speaks to another issue that we, as we move forward as a developing country, must deal with, and that is the placement of utilities in road infrastructure. And what we are looking at, and what I've spoken about on many occasions, is the need for us to ensure that in our design of roads under Infrastructure 2030, that part of the improvement in the standards that we will adopt is to ensure that we establish what we call utility chambers or channels, where you put the chamber either on either side of the road, wherever is most suitable, and to be able to access it without destroying the road pavement. That is where we want to go. It will cost a lot of money, but into the future, it's worth the investment.
Good afternoon. The government has spoken a lot about its plans for Infrastructure 2030 in terms of road rehabilitation and utilities and whatnot. This is a twofold question. We're almost at 2026. How close would you say that we are to achieving this infrastructural goal island-wide? And what are the lessons that the government would have learned thus far leading up to 2030?
Okay. Infrastructure 2030 is ideally a strategic plan. So it's first a strategic plan for the ministry, for the Department of Infrastructure. In terms of looking at the legislation, I've said it before, the legislation under which the Department of Infrastructure operates is a 1959 thereabout piece of legislation. It speaks of horse, donkey cart, etc., and pounds, shillings and pence. That's how old it is. So the first thing is to strengthen your legislative framework for the department. In there would deal with matters, as I said earlier on, of standards, road standards, etc. What are we building? You know, in the past, what would have happened? The government would build roads, and the primary road network would be built to a certain pavement strength, 15 years, 20 years, whatever the case may be. And what we call the feeder roads would be built to a pavement strength of 5 years. Some of them were agricultural feeder roads, some were just residential feeder roads. The problem with that is while you build roads, primary roads, for a pavement strength of 15 and 20 years, and you're hoping that you can extend it, and you build community roads for 5 years, yet still you're utilizing equipment now that roads are not built to the specifications. So yes, you can navigate the primary road, which has a strength of 15, 20 years, but then you take that piece of equipment, a trailer truck, etc., with all its axle weight stuff, and you put it on a community road, and in no time it destroys the community road. So when you pass on the community road, you see as if the pavement is just unfolding. You know, when we did the Saltibus Road, one of the things we discovered that Saltibus Road didn't have any base in terms of the base, just the base. What you had there was a road design for a community of agriculture. So it was just go in, grade the road, put in some material on it, and then, you know, you didn't even pave it at the time. You probably had what is called a surface stress on that road. So back to your question. Infrastructure 2030, first is a strategic plan. You deal with legislation. In there, you look at your standards, how you expect to run your department. So you know if you're building a road, what standard strength of the pavement, 15, 20, 30 years. What's your regime for road maintenance? Many times we believe that if we build a road with a pavement strength of 15 years, then you can go and sleep and wake up one morning on the 15th year and say, let's maintain it now. We are saying, no, we should have a regime, a protocol of maintenance. And that does not mean the day after the road is delivered, you go digging it up. What it means is that from the day of delivery, you begin to monitor the road and to see how the road is behaving so as to take the necessary interventions and to first preserve the pavement strength and extend the life of the road from the 15 to 20. Okay? And it's a real thing. I'm sure many of you can, when you drive on roads or when you walk, you see all those, what you call alligator cracks, the cracks along the road. It means there's some activity taking place. And when you see that, the engineers must be able to determine what is going on and to give it the necessary application. So with that strategic plan, then we are saying this should take us, and we should be ready, in addition to some of the maintenance work we must do from now going forward. By the year 2030, we should be on the cusp of taking off in terms of accepting and implementing a plan that will take us into the future. We have not done any serious infrastructure planning in this country for years, particularly road infrastructure. This year, as a consequence of Infrastructure 2030, we have introduced a design, planning, and implementation unit. So that unit now will be more or less the brains of the ministry, more or less plotting the way forward for infrastructure. Where do we see the country by the year 2030? And if you ask me, I will say, where do I see the year by 2030? We cannot have a congested Julian Hunt highway. We cannot have the congestion that we're having even on the Badlil. And therefore, let us start planning and see what are the alternative routes that we need to put in. The north-south link road from Grosley to Dennery, a mid-country bypass road that can take you from east to west or west to east, But all of these things we need to look at. What is the country talking about? As we open up the East Coast, what sort of activities are we going to have there? Will we have industrial activities? Is it agriculture? Is it education? Are new communities about to be opening? And so that Infrastructure 2030, which has more or less created the new planning department of the Department of Infrastructure, will prepare us moving forward. By the year 2030, then, you should be seeing not just an improvement in road quality or construction, but really having a more robust infrastructure program that will allow us to be able to, to present to our people and satisfy their needs.
Rebates as a means of lowering bus fares. Just curious about your take on that proposal. It's in response as part of their whole prescriptions to deal with cost of living.
Well, this is idiotic. It is naive. It demonstrates that there's somebody who doesn't even understand what they're into. So it's like having an individual working in a bank, and all they know is how to check money and to be out at the end of the day, to be short at the end of the day. What this person is talking about certainly cannot work. What we should be speaking about is a system that allows the country to get a reliable bus service, to work with the existing sector, and to see how we can transform from what exists now to a more public transportation system that guarantees movement of people 24 hours a day. The problem we have now in the bus system is the fact that, in certain constituencies or certain communities, you cannot get a bus after 7. You just cannot get. There's some communities that's underserved. The buses get to a particular point, the point which the legislation speaks to, it costs $2.50 to get to that point, and then to get beyond that point, then they charge the people $5. We need to have a regulatory system that allows for both public and private sector participation, but the intention must be to have a more efficient, reliable, and dependable bus system. If you do not have that, you will continue to see a dead city of Castries after 6 o'clock in the night. You'll continue to see a dead town of Beaufort after 5 in the afternoon. We need not to make false promises to people, to be expedient in our pronouncements because you believe if you say you'll give bus drivers a rebate or something, so whatever she said, I'm not too sure. But like I said, it's idiotic. Thank you.